Good morning, everyone. Welcome, and we are here to talk about raising the rates for OW and ODSP, but I want to begin by thanking the members of CUPE for standing up today and always for the well-being of all people, and in this case, the survival of those continuously kicked to the curb by governments that know full well they have legislated poverty through their policies. Now, I want to also specifically welcome Fred Hahn, President of CUPE Ontario, and Ron Anicich, ODSP Action Coalition, and Daffodil Davis, North York Harvest Food Bank. Today we have 10,000 people using food banks. Never before in the province of Ontario has there been this level of hunger. Never before has there been this level of homelessness, tent cities and encampments, except possibly during the Depression of the 1930s. Think about that. Never before has there been such an enormous gap between those with limitless money and everyone else. And please don't make the mistake of thinking everyone without a place to call home isn't working, because low-paid precarious work has also been normalized by this and the previous Liberal and Conservative governments. Yesterday, the Premier had the gall to say in the House that they support people on ODSP because they have tied the rates to inflation. But let's deconstruct that amount first. In 1995, the Mike Harris Conservative government cut the rates by 21.6%, which immediately pushed people into deep poverty. In the 15 years of Liberal government, it was only in the last year that they made a small gesture to raise the rates by 3%. But even that was too much for the Ford Conservatives, who reduced the increase to 1.5%. Since the last increase, actually the last time there was an increase to Ontario Works, inflation has risen by 35.2%. ODSP has increased marginally by 12%, but that is not even close to the rate of inflation. And let's not forget how many Ontario Works recipients have serious disabilities but have not yet been approved for ODSP. This is one of the reasons that food bank use has skyrocketed. And then you have all the people like education workers, like home care workers, who make so little money they have no choice but to use food banks. And when you see a government that would rather spend billions, $3.2 billion, on a pre-election bribe, rather than using that money to support people who need money to survive, to double those rates for ODSP, it's a crime. It's really shocking. I also want to take a moment to talk about the Conservative government's treatment of workers permanently injured or made ill in their workplaces who should be getting compensation from the WSIB, but instead are cast aside with nothing. The WSIB, with the full support of this government, has shifted the financial responsibility from business. And remember, the WSIB is paid for by business and not the public. But successive Conservative and Liberal governments have shifted the financial burden onto the public by forcing workers with permanent injuries onto ODSP. And then the Minister of Economic Development has the gall to brag about giving money meant to support injured workers back in the billions to businesses as a so-called surplus. And this brings me back to raising the rates. There are glaring levels of poverty in Ontario, and the government likes to pretend this is the result of lazy people who don't want to work. If Doug Ford wants to see the end of homelessness and encampments, he can stop shoveling money into the pockets of his insider friends and do two things immediately: double the rates for OW and ODSP and impose rent control on all forms of residential and commercial properties. Thank you. I'm going to hand this over now to Ron Anicich. Sorry.
Close enough. I admire that effort. Thank you. I'm Ron Anicich. I'm the co-chair of the ODSP Action Coalition and co-chair of the Raise the Rates Coalition. I'm also an ODSP recipient. The meager social assistance rates in Ontario directly affect the lives of hundreds of thousands of people in this province. But lately they've come to impact the very fabric of our society, almost every community in the province, in fact. These rates need to be at least doubled immediately. Right now, individuals on Ontario Works receive $733 a month, and that is an amount that has not been changed, as Lise mentioned, since Doug Ford was elected in 2018. While those on ODSP receive $13 $1.68 per month. Let's be clear. These rates are woefully inadequate. They trap people in a cycle of poverty, facing impossible choices between paying rent, eating, and other basic necessities. The good news is that there's growing recognition across the province that this situation is untenable. We're seeing broad public and political support for doubling the rates for both OW and ODSP. This isn't just a fringe idea anymore. It is becoming more and more mainstream as Ontarians recognize the moral and practical imperative of ensuring a basic standard of living for everyone. Now, some of you might be thinking, why would I care about this if I'm not on social assistance? The answer is simple. It affects everyone. First of all, it's a matter of basic human dignity. In a province as wealthy as Ontario, it's completely unacceptable that we allow our neighbors, friends, and family members to live in deep poverty. We are better than that. Second, poverty has ripple effects throughout our entire society. When people can't afford proper nutrition and health care and stable housing, it leads to an increased strain on our healthcare system, higher crime rates, reduced economic productivity. By investing in adequate social assistance rates, we invest in the health and safety of our communities. Third, many of us are just one setback away from needing these supports ourselves, especially in a time when more than half of Canadians are living paycheck to paycheck. A serious illness, a job loss, a family crisis, any of these could leave any of us relying on social assistance. We all benefit from a strong social safety net. Fourth, raising the rates is actually fiscally responsible in the long term. When people have their basic needs met, they're better able to pursue education, training, and employment opportunities. This leads to increased economic participation and a reduced reliance on social services over time. And finally, this is about the kind of society we want to build. Do we want an Ontario where the most vulnerable among us are left behind? Or do we want a province that embodies compassion, fairness, and opportunity for everyone? We need immediate action to address this crisis. At least doubling OW and ODSP is not just the right thing to do, it's the smart thing to do for the future of our province. I call on our provincial government to act now. To my fellow Ontarians, I ask you to join us in this fight. Contact your MPPs, speak out in your communities, and support organizations that are working on this cause. Together we can build an Ontario where no one is left behind in poverty. And to my fellow recipients, I'm going to ask you to not give up. There are many people across this province working hard to improve your lives right now. Not just the people in this room, but you'll find them at your food banks, at your legal clinics, at different community organizations. We are going to make this happen because this needs to happen. Never give up. Thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Aloma Daffodil Davis. I have been a frontline worker at North York Harvest Food Bank for the last 14 years. We are the primary food bank serving Northern Toronto. At North York Harvest Food Bank, we are working for a city where everyone can meet their food needs. But with food bank visit double what they were in just a few years ago, that mission is getting farther and farther away from us. Unfortunately, we just set a record for the highest number of visits ever in November last year. Then we broke that record again in May. Then we broke it again in July. A record-breaking day is just another day at the food bank now. Things are getting worse for the community we serve, not better. That's why North York Harvest Food Bank joined Rise the Rate Coalition in demanding that ODSP, Ontario Works, rate need to be doubled, and I say double immediately. From my personal family experience with ODSP and Ontario Works, and my professional experience at North York Harvest, I will be the first to say, food bank cannot fill the gap that is left by a broken social assistance system. Imagine living on $735 a month and your rent is twice that much. How does the government expect someone to be able to pay their rent, buy food, and afford medication? How? Imagine living. How is it possible that a country like Canada has so many people going hungry every day? I tell you how. The Ontario government is legislating people into poverty. Yes, I said it. The government is legislating people into poverty. Every day, hundreds of people walk through our doors at the food bank because they simply cannot afford to pay rent, let alone eat on social assistance rate. Every day, social assistance case workers, and this is a fact, will send their recipients to the food bank. And you're wondering why? Because they know no one can afford to eat on ODSP and on Ontario work and maintain their daily living. There are days at the food bank when I became exhausted, but nothing compared to what the hundreds of people coming through our doors are dealing with. I have lost members and clients of the food bank to suicide, to cancer, to preventable illness. Poverty is killing our community. There are days at the food bank when I wonder, how can we keep going on like this? And the truth is, we cannot. Food bank cannot fill the gap that our provincial government has allowed to grow this big. Food bank are a short-term solution. However, we need that long-term solution, and that has to start with the government. I am here on behalf of North York Harvest Food Bank with a clear message to the provincial government. You have the power to make the change. You have the power to double social assistance rate. You have the power to take our community members out of poverty. The food bank cannot do that, but you have the power to give our community members a life of dignity. Raise the rate, double ODSP, double Ontario work, double social assistance immediately. That's what we are here for. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Good morning, all. My name is Fred Hahn. I'm the president of CUPE Ontario, and I'm proud to be joined by Juanita, who chairs our Social Services Committee, and by Ron, who is one of the workers who delivers social assistance. It's an honor to be here, to be part of the Raise the Rates Coalition. CUPE is one of its founding members. Ever since it began, Raise the Rates has been a critical part of our union's fight for justice, dignity, equality, and human rights for all. In fact, it's one of the campaigns that makes me most proud to be a CUPE member. Our 290,000 hardworking members organized to fight to improve services in our communities every single day. But this campaign feels different. It feels different because it's a matter of life and death. It feels different because it's so obvious that it should not be political. The needs are so overwhelming and essential. It feels different because some don't see this as a traditional worker issue. I had a chance to sit down recently with some of the frontline workers who deliver municipal social services across the province, leaders from CUPE Ontario. We talked about this fight, about why they dedicate so much time and energy to it. Their answers grounded me, and it's important to share them with you all today. They said the work to raise the rates is a moral fight. They said that they leave work every day suffering moral injury, and that this fight is one way to fix it. CUPE municipal social service workers took their jobs to make a difference in their communities, to help people. But they have discovered that their jobs are actually first and foremost about upholding rules. They're part of a system, and the system has inhumane rules. Every day our members are applying Band-Aids on gaping wounds. and they carry that pain home with them. It bleeds into their lives, into their communities. It permeates our cities and towns. It's a strain on who we are as Ontarians. These workers want to help people in their time of need. They want to help people turn their lives around. They want to help people overcome great challenges. But the system they're a part of isn't built to do that. The rules they must implement trap people in poverty. And the workers are trapped there too. Many leaving their desks crying because of that trap. But it doesn't have to be this way. When we remind ourselves that Ontario is still a wealthy province, there's enough money in our province to have social assistance programs to ensure that no one lives in poverty. But instead, the Ford Conservatives have ensured that Ontario's social assistance system fails those who rely on it. The system locks them into poverty. All this at the same time as we're learning that the Conservatives are musing about a $100 billion tunnel, planning to give $3.2 billion a raid to the Treasury to potentially buy themselves an election because they're supposedly trying to help people with the cost of living. That's a fake choice, an obvious ploy. And as trade unionists, we reject it. We need real solutions, not political pandering. When the Raise the Rates coalition first launched, the demand to double social assistance rates seemed radical to some. Not anymore. That demand is echoed from nearly every corner of society, from opposition political parties to grassroots organizations, from food banks to legal clinics, from people who have long been overlooked and who rely on OW and ODSP to the 290,000 members of CUPE Ontario who are committed to a more equitable province. The only people standing in the way of this much-needed solution are the members of the Conservative caucus. If the Ford Conservatives sincerely want to help people dealing with the high cost of living, then they could start by doubling the rates for OW and ODSP, and then they would quickly move to invest in a vast range of policy changes that we need to end poverty, like public, non-market, deeply affordable housing, an end to price gouging by corporations, and then they would invest in public services, in our schools, our hospitals, our libraries, our childcare centers, home care, every other public service that we rely on and that benefits everyone in Ontario. Because as many of you may have heard me say before, public services are the great equalizer. Public services are the most powerful weapon we have in fighting poverty. That's true for OW and ODSP recipients. It's true for all of us. Raising the rates, making investments to end poverty, focusing on real and meaningful help for everyone in Ontario by investing in public services can achieve far more to deal with what people need for our neighbors, for all of us, than a one-time check for $200 could ever accomplish. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for those very powerful words. We can take questions now.
Ron, what do you make of the Premier Ford's recent talking point? He's been saying that if you can work and you're on ODSP, you should be working. But if you absolutely are too disabled to work, then it's okay. We're going to take care of you, and everything will be all right. He said this quite a few times in the past, maybe 2 months. What do you make of that line? And what?
It's not true. He's legislated ODSP recipients into lives of poverty. He insists that he's taking care of people that he's quite obviously not taking care of. You can ask any ODSP recipient if they use food banks or if they can afford to leave their homes. A lot of people can't. So I've also heard him say in that same speech that he spends $1 billion on social assistance, on OW and ODSP. So I'd like to just point out that $3 billion he's going to spend bribing the people of this province. I mean, it's he could be spending $1 billion, his own estimate, and doing something that would have a profound effect on every community in this province. People shouldn't be living outside. People shouldn't be living outside just because they're social assistance recipients. That's not what a social safety net is all about. I hope I've answered your question.
So, I guess, like Fred said that this feels different, but from where I'm sitting, it really doesn't. Like, this is the same criticisms that have been brought against the ODSP rates for over a year, and the PCs are very clearly impervious to this criticism. They don't. We mentioned it to Ford that the rate is below poverty. He just says, well, we raised 5% and we attached it to inflation. This is not working.
Well, he has done those things.
What else are you going to do to pressure the government on this issue? Because this criticism and this approach is not working.
A couple of years ago, when we started talking about doubling ODSP rates, even I wasn't convinced that it was something that was reasonably possible. Since that time, 3 of the 4 political parties in our parliament have come out in favor of this. Municipal councils across the province have come out in favor of this. United Way chapters, YWCA chapters. What's different from a year ago is the momentum that we have behind this movement now. We have an entire legal clinic system. We have ties to organized labor that we did not have a year ago. We're organizing to make this happen, and it is imperative. It's not something that's optional. We can't allow people to live in parks, not in the richest province, in one of the richest countries in the world. If Mr. Ford thinks that that's acceptable, that's great. I hope people keep that in mind when the next election comes around. If you're in favor of homelessness, then Doug Ford is your man. But if you want to see a change in your community, then please just vote for any other political party. I'm afraid that's the only way we achieve change this time around.
Okay. Fred, it doesn't seem like this issue has a lot of pull with the government, and you guys are, the CUPE is backing this campaign. But do you think that having public sector unions making this argument is really going to move the needle with this government? And the PCs have basically written you off as an anti-Semite. You have no pull with this government. Is your presence here hurting this cause?
We have 290,000 workers across the province. All of them are voters. That should matter to any government. What our union has learned about the Ford Conservatives is that they talk a good game, but when there's enough public support, when there's real pressure on this premier, he will turn tail and change his mind. And that's possible here because there's money that could be used to actually help improve people's lives, to actually help to move the needle to end poverty in our communities. It is possible for them to do it. Whether or not they do is up to them, and they will have to be held to account by the people of the province of Ontario.
I really wish someone could describe how you're going to do that pressure. Is it really good that we're just going to have to see what happens at the next election? Because you say there's momentum, but there's I'm the only one here. There's no sense that this issue has momentum. What are you going to do to fix that? What are you going to make it? How are you going to make it evident that people care and that this is something this is an untenable position for the government?
This is a starting place today, but it is incredibly important that CUPE has come on board with the huge size of that union. Nothing has ever changed for the better in our society without organized mass movements. What we can do at the political level, I can amplify the voices of people here, and these people who are here and all of the people across the province who are working so hard to help people who are living in poverty, who should not be living in poverty, they are the people, when we all come together, that noise gets amplified. The importance of the issue gets amplified. So we're also dependent on you as a member of the media to make sure that that message gets out, and we are not going to stop. Today is just the beginning.
I think it's good. We got to go to question period.
Me too.
Oh, yeah, me
Okay.
too, probably. Yeah.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Okay. Thank you.